Don't you just hate it when the police chalk your tire and give you a parking ticket? Most people would just pay the ticket and get it over with. I'm going to tell you the story of a case where instead of just paying the ticket, a lady actually challenged it. And she won using a constitutional argument. Hello again, I'm attorney Robert Flessas. In this video, I'm going to tell you exactly how she did it. But first, if you enjoy my videos, please consider subscribing to my channel to learn more about how you can protect yourself from the government. The case presented this issue. Is it legal for the police to chalk your tire as a means to gather evidence against you and to issue you a parking ticket? Well, the United States Court of Appeals in Michigan listened to her argument, and they determined that chalking a tire, at least under these facts, violates the Constitution. Here's her argument to the court. She argued that chalking her tire violated her Fourth Amendment rights because the government made an intentional trespass on her property, her car, by placing a chalk mark on her tire without her consent or without obtaining a valid search warrant. She also said that they did it to obtain information to give her a parking ticket. She said in order to conduct this search, the government must have a reasonable suspicion that she violated the law. They didn't. And since they didn't have a reasonable suspicion, then they needed to get a search warrant to chalk her tires. They didn't do that either. So without a warrant, the government then was required to show a recognized exception that allows a warrantless search. Well, in their defense, the government argued that chalking was not a search. But if it was a search, then it was reasonable without obtaining a warrant because there's an exception to justify their warrantless search under what's called the community caretaker exception. The community caretaker exception basically states that the government is charged with the duty to protect the public from harm. And if there is potential harm to the public, then the government can perform a warrantless search. Here's how the court looked at these arguments. They said there's two things to consider to determine whether a Fourth Amendment violation occurs when chalking a tire. First, does the chalking of a tire constitute a search within the meaning of the Fourth Amendment? Second, if it qualifies as a search, was the search reasonable? Let's look at the first issue. Is chalking your tire a search? The court said, absolutely it's a search. By chalking, the government trespassed on her property, which was her car. The government placed chalk on the car to watch to see how long the car was parked in the spot. Then they came back after the parking period expired, noticed the car was still there, then gave her a ticket. Chalking was similar to the government placing a GPS device on a car to track its movements. Well, let's look at the second issue. Was the warrantless search reasonable enough to make it legal? The government argued that their warrantless search by chalking was reasonable because there's a reduced expectation of privacy in a car because of its mobility. And they're also justified to perform a warrantless search under their existing community caretaker exception to the warrant requirement. The court disagreed with the government's arguments, and here's their reasoning. They said any warrantless search is unreasonable unless the government proves that an exception exists that allows them to perform such a search. The court also said if the government wants to search without a warrant, then they need probable cause to believe that the vehicle contained evidence of a crime. It didn't. The court said no probable cause existed here. The car was legally parked when they chalked it. Therefore, there was not even a reasonable suspicion that the law was being violated. Further, the court said that the government's community caretaker exception argument to avoid getting a warrant fails. That exception to the Fourth Amendment only applies when the government is protecting the general public from a hazard. By legally parking, she wasn't creating a hazard or traffic impediment that would rise to the level of a safety issue that could harm the public. The government then threw out some more arguments to justify their action. They said the search was justified because they just want to maintain orderly and efficient parking. The court said, are you kidding me? That method doesn't fly. The court said that the method the government used to enforce orderly parking, illegally chalking cars and handing out tickets, isn't good enough to allow a big-time constitutional violation. And the court correctly noted that the chalking is really designed to raise revenue for the city, and it wasn't an effort to protect the public. This is why we have a Constitution, viewers, and none of us should ever ignore enforcing our rights under it. The Constitution protects us against unlawful government acts. Hey, tell me a situation where you challenged a parking ticket and won. Post your comments below. I'm attorney Robert Flessas. Keep an eye out for my next video, and thanks for watching.